curtail or certainly decrease the amount of enemy Army activity.
But then, in November 1950, the Americans are stunned by the appearance of new Soviet-built MiG-15 jet fighters. With a top speed of 670 miles per hour, the MiG is 100 miles per hour faster than older F-80 and F-84 jets in Korea. The critical air supremacy achieved early in the war is now in jeopardy.
The MiG was built as a point interceptor. It was light, it had a lighter wing loading, it didn't carry as much fuel, which limited the range, but made it very good for climbing purposes and turning purposes.
It was optimized to shoot down B-29s. That's why it had the heavy cannon armament that it did, 223 millimeters and a 37 millimeter.
The cannon was really a surprising weapon. If the guy was within about 700 or 800 feet behind you and he fired it, you could feel the vibration with your rudder pedals. When that happened to you, you knew you better do something pretty quick, left or right.
For me to get right behind him and shoot him down. So what he did was, he turned that thing upside down and split S. That means he reversed his direction.
The split S is a commonly used fighter reversal technique. The aircraft rolls inverted and dives, pulling out in the opposite direction.
He was so low, and I was sure he wasn't going to make it, and I said to my wingman, this is going to be the easiest kill I ever had. Well, it turned out this guy made it.
There should have been a fireball, but the MiG recovers miraculously into a dry riverbed. Reisner watches in disbelief as the MiG twists and turns right on the deck.
He was so close to the ground, he kicked rocks and debris up. I, meanwhile, had managed to get in behind him. I got dents all over my airplane where he knocked rocks, blew rocks up off of the riverbed. Well, from there on, it was a real fight. This guy was some pilot.
Reisner can barely keep the stick in his hands as he's thumped hard by the MiG's jet wash. The MiG flies like a banshee. He chops power, pops out his speed brakes. The MiG is trying to force the Sabre to overshoot, which will expose Reisner to the MiG's cannon. Reisner counters by rolling his jet over the MiG, bleeding off to fly them. The German Air Force is the most experienced in the world. Some pilots, in combat since 1937, have hundreds of kills.
You had some superb pilots, so you never knew what you're going to be up against. I never got in two battles that were the same.
Olds and his wingman steal even closer, approaching undetected behind the vast German formation. To reduce drag, the P-38s dropped their heavy long-range fuel tanks that they needed to fly this far into Germany.
And I told my wingman, B.E. Hollister, tanks. Off went the drops, and we kind of barged ahead. And I lined up on tail end Charlie, and I was just about to shoot, and both engines quit.
Startled, Olds realizes that when he dropped his tanks, he forgot to switch over to his internal fuel supply.
So what the hell, I shot anyway. And to this day, I claim to be the only fighter pilot in the history of aerial warfare to shoot down an enemy aircraft while in the glide mode.
Olds' plan is simple. Trick the enemy into thinking that his F-4 Phantom fighters are the more vulnerable F-105 Thunder Chiefs. When bomb-laden F-105s flew over enemy territory, the MiGs came up and engaged the slower, less agile fighter bombers.
The North Vietnamese Air Force developed a hit-and-run tactic that's akin to guerrilla tactics, where the MiG-21s would come in at low altitude, pop up and try and hit the F-105 strike forces, but then escape before the F-4s could come down and attack them.
The reluctance of the MiG pilots to engage didn't mean they lacked courage or skill. The U.S. estimated that the North Vietnamese only had 16 MiG-21s. They were very careful how they used them. Robin Olds and his Phantoms, by flying like F-105s, using the same approaches, radio frequencies, call signs, and flight patterns, hoped to deceive the North Vietnamese radar operators into ordering the MiG-21s to attack the presumably easy prey. Once in the air, the American fighters would cut down the MiGs. Olds names the plan Operation Bolo.